Hi, and thanks for joining us. This is a replay of a webinar and conversation we had with Kevin Leggett from Southern New Hampshire University. We discussed what has turned out to be a really interesting and complex engagement at SNU. It started off with advisory work, included what we call Phase 0, which Kevin will describe. It involved managing affiliates with SailPoint's NERM platform in a unique way, and what has turned out to be the second largest implementation ever of SailPoint's IdentityNow platform, with over 1.5 million identities. So to start, let's have Kevin introduce himself.
Yeah, thank you. So I'm Kevin Leggett. As mentioned, I'm the Senior Director of Identity Access Management here at Southern New Hampshire University. I have a 20-year background specifically focused on identity and access management principles within higher education. As Southern New Hampshire goes through a pretty significant transformation in our services, Southern New Hampshire University, beyond our traditional campus we have here in Manchester, New Hampshire, we're a very large online school. We have roughly 200,000 active learners here at Southern New Hampshire globally.
Good, thanks, Kevin, and thanks for making the time for this discussion. Really appreciate it. So to start, I was thinking maybe you could set the stage for us and give an overview of the identity projects at SNU. Maybe cover some of the challenges that you faced along the way, and you can talk about the work that resulted.
Yeah, sure. So back in 2019, as part of this transformation, we did partner with integral partners to come in and perform an advisory with regards to our IAM services. So looking at everything from identity governance to access enforcement, really just get an overview of where we are, what's our current state, what our challenges would be as we went through this journey. That was completed, a typical 8 to 10 week engagement, very collaborative, interactive, back and forth, really, coming in here, not just focused on IT, but also the business, looking under the rocks, right? Stirring things up, finding out what's going on, the good, the bad, the ugly, and then really coming up with a game plan, a roadmap of how to move forward. And as I mentioned, that was concluded towards the end of 2019. Unfortunately, as like a lot of organizations, we did not immediately act upon those recommendations going forward on the roadmap. We are in the middle of a transformation project replacing our student information system. So it was not the opportune time to move forward with some of the recommendations, and the resources were focused on that initiative. So we, took the playbook and put it on the shelf. Luckily, we were in a position several years later, 2022, to bring Integral back in and do a refresh of the plan and the roadmap. I think it's just very, very important that, something that was roadmapped out, a period of time ago does need to be refreshed from time to time. The business changes, the situations changes, the technology, the people change. You want to take a fresh approach before you actually start getting into introducing any significant change. So with that initiative wrapping up in the middle of 2022, we immediately started looking for partners for solutions specifically focused on identity governance. We were dealing with, a lot of homegrown governance when it comes to taking information from our systems of truth, and we have multiple systems of truth. As a school, and schools and healthcare really have this challenge about, employees, customers, our learners, as we call them, different systems of truth, bringing that together, using scripting, when I talk about homegrown, generally scripting to produce credentials and manage those credentials going forward. We just really knew that right decision at the right time, a decade or two earlier, but it was time to move forward. So we took the recommendations from the advisory, looked for solutions, right, vendors and their products to what would be the best off the requirements we got from Integral, and then worked on a delivery, identifying a delivery partner, which turned out to be Integral partners as well. That implementation of a governance solution was commenced in 2023. And we went live in late 2023. We could have gone live with that solution a little bit earlier. We actually bundled the launch of our identity governance platform, which was SailPoint IdentityNow, along with the implementation of a new student information system. As I'd mentioned, that was a strategic initiative for the university to replace that. And, that's how we manage our customers, right? So obviously a key initiative for the school. So we basically bundled the implementation of that governance solution for identity and access management with the launch of our new student information system.
Thanks, Kevin. That's a great overview of the journey that we've been through so far. You mentioned the advisory and also the Phase Zero project. Can you talk a little bit about those and how you think they might have impacted the project if they did?
Yeah, so the advisory set us up for success. But as you mentioned, there's a Phase Zero. Phase Zero is, the advisory, think about it being more at the 30 to 50,000 foot level. Phase Zero gets you down to 5,000 feet. So let's get into some of the real details, which is going to help really position the business, not just IT, but the business, to be successful in a transformation such as this. So it's really about business process flows, understanding the strengths and weaknesses, the potential to modify those business process flows prior to the implementation, to simplify things as much as possible. But it's really just to ensure that not just the university itself, but our implementation partner had a firm understanding of how things operate here from a business perspective and the impact of the business so that we're successful. Phase Zero is really about peeling back the onion and finding out how the business operates. And it's really actually a very good, it's really a really good exercise, right? Because again, you're not just focused on technology, you're focused on how the business operates. And each business operates differently. And especially in higher ed, can be extremely complex. We literally discovered things that nobody had an understanding why we were doing things the way we were doing them. It's just that we've been doing this for 5 or 10 years. And when you really take a fresh look at it, it's, do we still need to be doing this, or is this process actually adding value to the business? And so that exercise is very refreshing. There's a commitment to do it. Everybody's busy, but Integral Partners was able to really moderate that conversation that we needed to have as a business to get that level of detail that would make us successful.
Right, right. And as you said, Phase Zero is really about informing and preparing both parties and setting up the project for success. Can you talk, Kevin, now a little bit about the environment and the ecosystem at SNU? There's really a lot of complexity with, I think, 3 authoritative sources and the dual student information systems you mentioned. You talk about the challenges that might have presented?
Yeah, I mean, from an employee standpoint, our authoritative source is Workday. That was a project that was implemented, several years prior to this initiative. So pretty standard in most organizations. We did not have an authoritative source for any affiliates we may have. They're not managed in Workday. Workday is strictly for employees. So there was no authoritative source for the affiliates of the workforce, the non-employees. We also are using Salesforce as a primary front end for the core of our admissions process. But ultimately, our customers, our learners, reside in a student information system. As mentioned, that's something that a major transformation here at the school, going from Aleutian's Colleague to Aleutian Banner. We're still actually in that process. This is a process that is a journey that takes a year or two. And we're currently in our coexistence mode where we have 2 student information systems at the time. So as you can imagine, from an identity standpoint and a governance standpoint, you have to account for that in your planning. So we'll be down to 3 authoritative sources: Banner for our customers, Workday for our employees, and we've introduced SailPoint's NERM, a non-employee risk management, formerly SecZeta product, to be the authoritative source for our affiliates, our non-employees. So those are our 3 authoritative sources. Again, all integrated with SailPoint's IdentityNow. We have a single instance in production that's managing our entire audience, and that includes we're managing 1.5 million identities in IdentityNow. that's our current customer base, our employees, our affiliates, as well as our alumni. So that is the identity footprint here at Southern New Hampshire University. As I mentioned, we have roughly 200,000 active learners. In our recent start of a term, we added an additional 20,000 new learners. That's not returning learners, but new learners. We're on a growth spurt. So we are, it's about volume. We have volume here. So that's an identity challenge for us, volume.
I think it's a testament, Kevin, to the work that you and your amazing team have done. You mentioned earlier that a project like this requires a commitment, and you've certainly done that. I think this turned out to be the second largest IdentityNow implementation that's ever been done. And the speed at which it happened and the level of complexity and the effectiveness, it's just been amazing to be a part of.
Yeah, in our partnership, we obviously partner. We have a partnership with SailPoint, but we primarily rely on integral partners as an admiral partner to help us navigate through that. So, working with a delivery partner that has that relationship with SailPoint was key, because we were breaking some barriers, right? And there was some challenges, and like all good projects, challenges are fun, especially if you can overcome them. So, and have them addressed, and we were able to do that working with Integral and SailPoint.
So now let's talk a little, Kevin, about the challenges of avoiding duplicate identities. I know that's always a concern, but with the multiple authoritative sources you're dealing with and the other requirements and all these complexities, you talk about how that was addressed with what was called identity mastering. I think there was some pretty innovative work that was done there.
Yeah, a key challenge here at Southern New Hampshire is historically we would put every individual into the student information system. From a legacy perspective, we would put all our employees in the colleague, we would put all our affiliates in the colleague, and all our students in a student information system. Now, a student information system is meant, it's a system for students. You would have some employees there, faculty, et cetera, and the administrators, but we were using it as a repository of all things people related. And that would provide some vetting services to help reduce duplicates. But it was controlled by the vendor, right, Ellucian. One of the key deliveries we wanted to do with the introduction of a new student information system is not duplicate that. And what I mean by that is we wanted to break the pattern of having to put our entire audience, which is very large, into the student information system for that function. We wanted to have more control over what was going on. So we looked at the marketplace. We were not able to find what I call an enterprise vetting product that would meet our needs. And what I mean by enterprise vetting, I'm talking about cross-authoritative systems. So we know that if you enter somebody into Workday, for example, there's some vetting to help reduce duplicates, the same thing in Salesforce, et cetera. Actually, SailPoint's NERM has this as well, where it does duplicate checking. But we're talking about across the ecosystem, across the enterprise. So for example, if I hire somebody into Workday, not only is it Workday checking within Workday, it's also, we want to have it so we're checking, well, is this individual, for example, also somebody we already know about because they're a learner here? So that's a cross-authoritative system. So we could not find a product that met our requirements for that. So we built one, and we branded it Identity Master. And this is a system that was built with our partnership with Integral Partners. They took point on the development based off the business requirements that we worked out and provided. It is a product of identity in itself that's performing this vetting process. And the way this works is it's a repository that's very secure, that we have different endpoints, whether it's Salesforce, Workday, NERM, that basically has an integration with this Identity Master service, and it does the vetting. So again, across the enterprise, it's really helping us reduce our ability to create duplicates. Duplicates you will never eliminate entirely, but there's a lot of overhead with cleanup of duplicates, not just from the business standpoint, but also from the customer experience. So we really want to reduce that as much as possible. So that was the investment we made working with Integral Partners to build that out. And it's been very, very successful. We are able to reduce the amount of duplicates that we are having, while at the same time, um, being more performing it in a more secure way than we were before. And this is a vetting algorithm that we worked with Integral Partners, and we own it, we control it. So we have the flexibility to adjust and adapt. And that's just something I was unable to find on the marketplace. So it's key here at Southern New Hampshire. We do not onboard any individual of any type providing access to any services without going through Identity Master.
So, Kevin, you previously mentioned that affiliates were a big part of the work that we did together, and working with NERM, which is SailPoint's solution for third-party identities. And we did some pretty cool stuff with NERM that I don't think it was intended to do. So maybe you could talk a little bit about why that was necessary and then what the ultimate solutions were.
Yeah, so we looked at NERM initially as it was designed, which is, the management of affiliates in the workforce that are non-employees. And that's the fundamental role of that service. It does that well. That's why we brought it in the door, but we also extended it. And what I mean by that is we do have, um, Southern New Hampshire University is pretty aggressive in the M&A world. We buy schools. We have affiliations with other schools, and we wanted to extend the capabilities of NERM to basically allow us to onboard students without going through our standard admission process, which would be through Salesforce. So we were able to easily and quickly onboard different populations of students, which from a business perspective allowed us to react rapidly, to basically extend NERM to be able to handle the input of students as well as non-affiliates. And that is how these particular populations of student, for example, actually get into our student information system. So it's not just about NERM provisioning or governing access. It's also how the records themselves are being created within the student information system. That is the entry point. And again, that NERM has also been extended to have that relationship with Identity Master for vetting. It's vetting within NERM, but it's also vetting across the enterprise. The flexibility in the forms and the workflow allow us to have integrations with other systems as well that you would generally not see in a standard NERM IdentityNow relationship. So we were able to leverage the expertise with the resources at Integral Partner uh, to basically extend NERM beyond its initial capabilities.
Okay, so let's talk briefly about where you are now. I believe the implementation lasted only 11 months, which is crazy considering the complexity and the size of this project. And last I heard, you had provisioned around 19,000 accounts in the last 2 months?
Your numbers are off a little bit, Tom. We were actually close to 40,000.
Wow.
So we went live in November of 2023, along with our new student information system transformation as well. We have retired legacy processes, PowerShell scripting, et cetera, as it related to provisioning. We're in a position now where we have a robust governance tool uh, and affiliate management tool that allows us the flexibility to quickly react to changes that are occurring in the environment. So what we're doing now is you know, this is not about getting there and then just being static, for the next 10 years. It's about taking this tool for a ride, right? And really addressing some of the needs within the business itself when it comes to provisioning and access. So that is where we are right now. Again, we're still in the transformation process for our student information system. So the team's busy working on the transformation of sunsetting one of the student information systems. So it's an authoritative source we'll be losing. But that's where the focus is for the remainder of our academic year, which wraps up in June. We had road mapping sessions, which we're working with integral partners on. What's next? Lifecycle management extensions, the ability to really get into improving our access request processing. So we are using ServiceNow as the front door for that. We really want to integrate that with IdentityNow to be the fulfiller of access requests to services. So we're taking the human element out of that. Certification campaigns. Um, not as high a priority in higher ed as it is in some financial institutions, for example, but we still have requirements, FERPA, et cetera, that we need to be meeting. So we want to be, proactive in the certification arena. So that's something we'll be leveraging with the workforce for IdentityNow. We are currently looking at what we should be doing for privileged access management. We're actually engaged right now in an advisory hyper-focused on privileged access management. So I'm very excited about seeing what comes out of that from a road mapping perspective and how that will eventually integrate with our governance solution. Just very, very excited that we are now positioned well in the IAM arena to really react to the needs and demands of the business.
And Kevin, that is the perfect transition to a discussion about managed services. So we talk to a lot of organizations who, instead of trying to build an internal team themselves to support their identity program, they'd rather rely on someone like us to provide those expert resources. Other organizations like yourself, they already have a team, but they still find value in that external support. So can you talk a little bit about the managed service conversation and where you are with that?
Yeah, I mean, the managed services in the IAM space actually took me a little bit by surprise. It's something that was not brought up during our advisory back in 2019. It really wasn't. It was really focused on what this organization would need from an organizational footprint and resources that the organization would need to bring to bear to be successful. There's challenges in that area. To get talented resources to be able to do these things, and it's something that was raised, and I think it's a good example of why a refresh of an advisory is important, because things change, and it's something that was brought up during the advisory refresh in 2022, that this is an area that we want to focus on. And again, we haven't, I lead a great team here at Southern New Hampshire University of IAM experts, but there's certain operational activities that I'm just very comfortable with giving that to a managed service provider. I don't need my internal staff to be focused on that. I need them focused on, more strategic things. So that's the desire there. So we are in the process of onboarding a managed service provider, being integral partners. That's currently in process. We went through a due diligence on this. This is something that we went through a formal RFP process. Looked at many vendors, all had different strengths they brought to the table. The recent relationship between Integral Partners and Exalient was a positive in my mind when it came to managed services for IAM. That's something that the Exalient team brings to bear. Also, in a key aspect is familiarity with the environment, and the partnership we've had with Integral with delivering these services, and especially some of these custom services I talked about. So whether it's Identity Master, not something that's a product off the shelf, and the extensions we've done with NERM, that was a key aspect as well. The familiarity with the environment, understanding our business, those were key components and key decision points that were relevant in the decision to go with Integral Partners.
Okay, so finally, Kevin, last question. You've got a wealth of experience with IAM and higher education. Let's say you're sharing a cup of coffee with a colleague from another university, and they're facing similar challenges, and maybe they're considering modernizing their identity program. What would your advice be to them?
Well, I'm not a coffee drinker. I've never had a cup. So I've been in IT for a while, so I'm a soda fanatic. So I guess my point is, this can seem very daunting. Like this is just too big. And in higher education, it's a little slower than the general business cycles. It's a little slower, but this is doable. And I guess what I would say is, and it really started off with the advisory, is just breaking this down into workable chunks that makes it doable, because you do have to show value as soon as possible. This is not something where if I do this, I'm going to show value in 3 or 4 years. You need to show value. You need to address the problems you have. You can't address problems if you don't know what the problems are, and you don't know what the problems are unless you start looking under the rocks. So that's what the advisory starts us off with. That's what phase 0 really gets to the next level to really get into it. I guess what I would say is, it may seem daunting. It may seem somewhat quite a bit of grunt work, like, not fancy stuff like looking at business processes, but ultimately the team enjoys going through it because you're really spending the time to figure how the business is working. And I think that's key for any delivery partner within an organization. Understand the fundamentals of the business and how the business is working. In the business of higher ed is very complex. Again, it's a merge of customers as well as employees, as well as affiliates. It's very demanding. It's very challenging. From a persona perspective, you can be an individual within a school. I was an individual with the school where I was a student, I was an employee, I was teaching, I was a parent of students. You can have all these different roles and still be a same individual. From an identity perspective, it's important to look at it from an individual perspective of, as this individual, I need to have that holistic view of that person and what do they have access to and is it appropriate, right? For the appropriate role or roles I have at that time. And that's just very unique within higher education. So I know, for my colleagues out there in this space in higher education, it's worth the investment to be thinking broader and be more strategic than in the day-to-day challenges that we all face.
So thanks for watching. If you have any questions about the topics you heard discussed here, or anything else related to identity, cloud security, or zero trust, that is our sole focus, and we'd be happy to help. Thanks, and take care.